Strategic planning, what is it? Why is it important? How do you do it? Who should you involve in it? Why do strategic plans fail? All these questions and many more I explore with my guest, Chad Prinkey, who is the founder and CEO of Well-Built Construction Consulting. He spends all day, every day, working with construction companies, helping them to excel, and he is an expert in the field of strategic planning. We go an hour here. Every minute is packed with useful information. You will not regret the time that you spend today listening to this podcast episode. Settle in, enjoy the ride. Let's get going with Chad. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Chad, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you having me.
It's my pleasure. And today we're going to dive into a topic that is vital for every construction company owner, and that is strategic planning. So I want to start with the famous quote attributed to probably many people that no plan survives contact with the enemy. And therefore, what is the point of strategic planning?
Yeah, so that is the constant issue that I bump into with people that, particularly in the construction industry, it feels like you're pretty much just riding the wave with the market, right? And so what's the point in building a strategic plan? And I think that is such a common way of thinking. The problem is you wake up every day and your company is dealing with the exact same problems that it was dealing with yesterday, last year, and 10 years ago if you don't build a plan, right? And B, you are completely at the whim of luck, of chance, if you're not operating without a plan. So it's just hard work and a lot of waste. And that's really, when you ask a question, why to build a plan? It's to prevent waste, and it's to make sure that you're waking up happy with your company and that you don't find yourself running a business that you're disappointed in.
That's interesting, because you said that companies struggle with experiencing the exact same problems again and again. Why is it that strategic planning is going to help me overcome those problems? There
are different aspects of a strategic plan, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But one of the essential aspects to your plan is, what are you doing to work on your business? How are you going to make your business better in 3 months, in a year, and in 3 years compared to your business today? And so that working on your business aspect, it's just not something that people do without a plan. They just spend no time working on the business. They spend all time working in the business, and that's that old adage.
Yep.
But particularly in construction, it's a business that's driven by urgency, driven by schedule, driven by customers banging on the door, and driven by a desperate need for work sometimes, and then total overwhelm and with work and other times. And so if you're not being really intentional with a working on the business strategy, you're not going to be a better company tomorrow than you were today. You're going to be the same company with more experience, more bruises, possibly a lot of turnover, but not a better company.
Okay, so then before we go any further, I want you to clearly define what you mean by strategic planning, or what is a strategic plan?
At its core, a strategic plan is clear strategic direction for your business so that you are intentionally making the decisions about the company you will be today, tomorrow, and into the future. That's what I mean by strategic planning. And I don't want to complicate it beyond that. If we can get into more, obviously we'll talk about some of the depth that goes into that statement. But if you keep it really simple, it's like, this is our direction. This is where we're headed. And it's a decision about where we're headed rather than letting the market decide.
So what does the word strategic mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. Strategic, so oftentimes strategic gets compared with the word tactical. So you take strategic on one end of the spectrum, you have tactical on the other end of the spectrum.
Yep.
And I think what I mean by strategic is that it's the taking a step back. It's thinking about not just doing, which is the tactical side of things. It's the tactical is all about execution, and tactical requires skills and talent and, and time, to execute. But strategy is knowledge work. It is preparation. It's planning. That's what strategy really means. And so here's what I find is that a lot of contractors are actually really, really good at this when it comes to strategy for their projects.
Right.
They're really good at strategy. That is strategy. That's not tactical. When you get a new project, you get that $15 million concrete job with, all kinds of depth and complexity. How am I going to marry it up with this existing structure and build it on top of a subway system and all the kind of stuff that contractors have to deal with every day? They step back and they do all kinds of strategic work to make sure what they don't do is just show up on the job site and start plowing into it. Yet that's exactly what they tend to do with their businesses.
Yeah. Okay. So let's continue to dive into this. From what I've heard so far, strategy is answering the question, where are we going? Whereas tactics answers the question, what we're going to do to get there. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. Tactics are about execution and so if the strategy is we're going to start and I'll work on a job site as an example.
Mm-hmm.
The strategy is we're going to start over on the west end of this building. We're going to the game plan is that we're going to be completed with the west end in 4 days, stocked on the east end by day 3, making sure that the general contractor has our site ready for us so that we can get rolling on day 5. Right. That's a strategic plan for the project.
Yeah.
Tactics are making sure that happens. It's that's all about, okay, guys, everybody knew the plan. Now it's everybody's got to run the play.
Right.
Everybody has their position. You're the quarterback, you're the running back, and we all need to run the play.
Okay. We've talked about this shift from working in your business to working on your business. And as we're thinking about strategic planning, what are the essential questions that I'm looking to answer in the strategic planning process?
I think the first question, and it's often the most perplexing, is what are the owners trying to accomplish? Not every business owner has a desire to be the largest contractor in their market.
Okay.
Some do. Not every owner prizes net profit over everything else.
Right.
Some do. And I think that's the starting point, is you got to have owner clarity. If your owner is clear, or owners are clear about what they want, that is, I'll be honest with you, I think that's pretty rare. I think I don't see that nearly as much as you should. I think there are so many business owners that are absolutely just on a treadmill and they don't know what they're trying to accomplish. I know that. I don't just think that.
So let me ask you this then, because I know there's business owners listening right now and that may be resonating with them. What are some key questions that I have to ask myself in order to get clear on what I actually am trying to accomplish?
What do I want my job to be? That's a good starting point. What do I want my job to be? Okay. Do you even want a job? That's another legitimate question.
You mean my job to be in the business?
Correct. And do I even want a job in this business? Because it is possible for construction owners. I know many successful construction owners who are living the dream, so to speak, who've done a great job of building a business that really doesn't require them in any way, shape, or form. And they're pursuing other things, whether it's hobbies or family or other business pursuits. That's also a fair answer to what do you want your job to be.
Right.
But that would be the starting point, is what are you spending your quote unquote working time doing? And so I'd start there. I'd talk about, what do you want to earn? What does financial success look like to you? And what kind of timetable do you have for doing that? What are your priorities with this business? What is this business mostly a vehicle for? Is it a vehicle mostly for financial gain? Is it a vehicle mostly for some family stability that you actually want to create a legacy? I really am not judging when I say this.
No.
Is it about ego?
Yep.
Is it about, accomplishing something and being able to, whether that's on a private level, leaning over to your, teenage son and saying, Dad built that?
Yep.
Or is it about being on the front of magazine covers? All those things are possible. Those are some starters. I could keep going, but I think that gives you a sense of what I'm looking for when I'm working with our owners on clarity.
Well, it's interesting. Let's just explore that a little bit, because this process of clarity, there's a number of what questions that you have asked. And then the thing that occurs to me is, what is the why behind the what? So for instance, if I don't want to be in the business, but I want a business to be running effectively, why is that? What role does the why question or why questions have in helping to lay the foundation for an effective strategic plan?
So it's a really involved question that's a really heavy question. I'm glad that you're going there. I'll say this. I have helped to create plans that have varying degrees of why strength, right? And both plans have been successful.
Yeah.
But I think that if you have a really powerful why,
mm-hmm.
your likelihood of follow through, right? The likelihood of follow through goes up exponentially if the why is something that is really non-negotiable for you. If it's something that you are just passionately driven toward. I also, again, have helped to create successful plans where the why is like, hey, we want to accomplish X and Y and Z. And I'll say why. And the answer is like, well, because I like accomplishing things. Well, okay.
Yep.
And you can still win with that. It's just, I think it's a question of like how committed you are to the plan.
Why is it difficult for people to tell themselves the truth about the why?
I think it's embarrassing to admit that they want to be millionaires. To some people, it's to admit that out loud, to say,
yep.
I want to have a lot of money. I think we have some baggage in our culture about what it means to say out loud that they want to have $20 million. And I think that keeps people from admitting that sometimes. I think it's also, we have baggage around retirement. I think we have a lot of baggage in the construction industry. And, we could argue about whether it's good or bad. I think to some extent it's healthy and it makes the construction industry what it is. But hey man, this industry is about hard work.
Yep.
And I came up working hard, and it's embarrassing to admit that I want to not work hard at any point in time. And I think that's something, one quick story. I was working with a client who went from about $20 million in revenue at a 10% net margin, which is good money, over the course of about an 8-year period, moved to about 120 million in revenue with a little less than a 10% net margin, but pretty darn good. And that was obviously life-changing kind of money for the owner. And the owner ended up giving kind of a State of the Union address to the company, and as they always did, really, really well-run business, following all kinds of best practices to get there. And I remember he was talking to the group, and he goes, some of you might have noticed that my wife bought a new car. It's a really nice car. I wish she wouldn't have. I'm embarrassed by it, guys. I just want you to know that I haven't changed. It's like, wow, that's amazing that he feels this need to apologize to his construction company for his financial success. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's a thing that keeps people, I think, from being wholly honest with themselves about what they're trying to accomplish.
So I think that actually comes into another aspect of running a business that many people struggle with. And as you're describing it, construction companies, the owners of construction companies many times have started, with their belts on. They've come up through the field, or let's say they even came from project management. They had to, obviously manage projects well and work extremely hard. And so one of the problems that they have with this, and this is related to strategic planning, is that they don't feel like they're working when they're doing strategic planning. So when I'm working on my business, I don't feel like I'm working, and therefore I avoid that because of feelings of guilt, perhaps, or just being unfamiliar what it's supposed to feel like to do that thought work, that knowledge work, so to speak.
That is so on point, Eric. It's so on point. I can't tell you how many meetings I will, even with really experienced strategic planning clients of ours who have gotten tons of results from it, where we'll finish the meeting and it's, people are like, all right, we got to get back to work. Damn it. This is like, we got to work.
Yep.
It's because you're exactly right. They don't feel like they're working. There's an embarrassment in general to like that we're not sweating, so we're not making money. And that there is your business, your role in the business fundamentally must change if you want your business to change. It just over the course of time as the chief executive, if you will, or the ownership.
Let me take you back to that gentleman that you were talking about who went from 20 million to 120 million. What were some of the fundamental changes that he made in the way that he behaved that helped him to scale the business in that way?
So the first key thing was he realized what he wasn't good at, and he put his ego aside and started really aggressively trying to replace himself in some key functions in the business.
So tell me, what wasn't he good at?
So he was really poor, frankly, at strategy. He was a highly capable tactician. And was, as a manager, fantastic. Just an unbelievable people manager. But what he really struggled with was the taking a big step back. So a couple of major tweaks, brought in, I mean, even to the point where he brought in a president of the company to lead the business so that he could not be that person. Now he would oversee and authorize and all that type of stuff, but again, just upgrading all the way around. I think it comes down to that upgrading from himself in all these key positions, and having the discipline to spend his profit that way.
Okay, yeah, so that's interesting. So how did he come to that realization? Because to me, that's often challenging for a founder, particularly, to admit that he's not what some people might call a visionary. And so how did he come to that realization? What was that process?
So I'm sure that he would say that I played some role in that process, but along with a board of advisors. I think that was one of the most essential things, is that he just put together his bonding company, his attorney, his accounting firm, his strategic growth partner in all these different facets. There was a group of about 8 of us that we did a kind of 360 on his business annually and on him. And we would provide him with a scorecard and set of recommendations. And he had I think it all really does come down to having level of self-awareness and humility.
It's interesting because those things aren't necessarily what we immediately associate with success. And it seems like it takes people time to realize that the more aware I am of myself and the more willing I am to accept who I am as it comes to who I am at my very best and as it relates to business, the more I can do that, the more successful I'm going to be.
So this goes to the definition of success again, Eric, and what are you actually going for? So I'll tell you, this is purely an observation. I don't have any data to back this other than just lots of examples personally. But I believe that you can be extraordinarily successful by the definition of financial success that we use in our economy today. But you can be amazingly successful with almost no self-awareness, as long as you're really smart and you're a hard worker and you've been fortunate enough to have some talented people around you. I think you can be very successful. But I find that the happiest people who are also successful, right? If I take that same group of top performing business owners in the construction industry, which is really the only industry I have any credibility talking about, but in the construction industry, the happiest people in that same top segment of successful owners are the ones who have had the awareness to say, I'm weak in these areas, I need help in these areas, and either hire or go through personal development, self-improvement. And the ones who are unhappy are they're just heads down and grinding, and they look up once at the end of the year. The money's not even making them happy. Like that, none of it's making.
What do you mean by happiness?
What I mean by happiness is an overall sense of positivity and wellness. That feeling that you are today allowed to feel really good about yourself, and you're allowed to feel really good about the people around you and your life. So many people have happiness tied up with outcomes, with achievements. Happiness is really what you do and what you think every day. So what I mean by happiness in that case is, I find that the people who are feeling the greatest sense of wellness are the people who are being really honest with themselves and taking steps to say, I would feel better, and I think our results would be better if I stopped doing this and instead handed that off to this person or hired somebody to do that. And that might cost me money, but I really think that's the right thing for our business.
Okay. Interesting. Let's go back to the discussion on strategic planning. We're talking about some essential questions. And so what is the owner trying to accomplish? Let's assume that the owner is relatively clear on what they're trying to accomplish and why they're trying to accomplish it. And it seems like it's specifically focused on the owner. What are the next questions then that bring the conversation beyond the owner into the business itself?
Yeah, this is really where the fun and big and multi-layered stuff starts to come in. The owner clarity part is something that I don't want to overblow, but I'll just say that if it's not right, the business will struggle. Here, just one quick example. So I was working with a team. I don't even know how many years ago now, but I was working with a team of about 6 executives. There were 5 executives and 1 founder who was the CEO of the business. The founder was about 65 years old, something along those lines. And the founder was a hard line. Why are we even building a strategic planner? Right. That's where his mentality was.
Yep.
And these 5 other executives who were anywhere from 40 to actually like 35 to 60 or something along those lines were very much like, we need a business plan. We need to know where the heck we're taking this thing. And the team started putting together, the founder went along with it. He was like, fine, if you guys want to build a plan, we'll build a plan. And I was responsible for facilitating, which was fun, right? Because I'm working with this founder and he's like, what are we even talking? So I'm working with a team, there's all this energy, and then I go and talk to the founder, and the founder would be like, I don't know why we're even. And so eventually we were in this, we had built a plan, and the plan had no teeth. It was complete BS. And I felt really frustrated by it. I was frankly embarrassed. I was like, I'm taking money to build a crappy plan because it just lacks integrity. It's clear the owner is not behind this plan.
Right.
And so one day I threw caution to the wind. I was like 4 or 5 months into the reinforcement of the plan. And I said to the owner, I was like, look, you do not want to do what we're doing. I would recommend we pull the plug on the whole thing, because everything that we're running into, we're saying we want to hire this. You're saying we don't have the money. You're saying that we want to open an office here. You're saying that just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think you're even reasoning here. I think you're just opposed. So there, I said it. What's going on? And he says, you know what? My definition of success in 3 years is I'm sitting on a beach enjoying my retirement. That's what my vision. And that was the first honest moment that we ever got out of that owner. And it was awesome. I was like, wait, this we can work with. And it was like, we went to this boiling point where I thought I was basically, I was prepared to be, I was quitting if not being fired, right, as a consultant for them at that moment. And instead, it came back from the boiling point, and the whole team shifted the conversation to how do we enable that?
Okay.
And all of a sudden we had the owner's attention, and the strategic plan had traction, and man, the machine flew. So, getting back to what are all the pieces of the strategic plan outside of owner clarity, the answer is, what kind of customers are we going after? What size are we trying to become? What kind of markets should we be in, both geographically and market sector wise? How are we going to staff organizationally to accomplish that stuff? I mean, really, honestly, Eric, like every business question you could ask yourself: what kind of training and development do we need? There's a million things that could potentially come in, and almost unlimited number of things that could come up.
So let me stop you there. Let's say I've never done really strategic planning, or like I've done strategic planning, but it was crap. Is there a particular point with these specific questions that I should start at? Or is it something where I just need to kind of feel my way through it? What would you say, Chad?
I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I do find that starting with a vision of the business you want to become is again, let's check the box on owner clarity and make sure that we don't have a mess there. But defining a clear vision for the business you want to become tends to be a very powerful experience for folks.
So let me ask about the time frame. There's many different frames or opinions on this. 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. What's your opinion on that? 20 year?
It has everything to do with what stage you are in business. One company that I worked with had an absolute urgent fire of a need to get a plan in place. They were losing money. They were on their third year in a row losing money, and they were not in a healthy place. There were a lot of reasons for that. It would have been completely irresponsible to build a 10-year vision for a company like that. We were on like 1 year vision, quarterly breakdown, monthly breakdown, weekly game plan, right? Like, because you have got to dig out of this hole. It doesn't make any sense to dream about your dream home when your kitchen is literally on fire. Those companies need a 1 year plan max. Sometimes even it's irresponsible to look at a year. You just look at a quarter.
Right.
Then there are really, really healthy, well-run companies that are humming along, and they have a long-range goal. Owner has no intentions of doing anything with the business, in terms of exit or any of that type of stuff for the next decade. I love a 10-year inspirational vision there. But in terms of planning, like real planning, I think the plan needs to be in-depth plan for a year max. And then we can have items in place for Horizon 2, Horizon 3. That's how I usually think about it, we might have things that we're not working on this year, but we know we're going to work on next year. So we want to make sure that we're doing things this year that set us up for success there, even as far out as 3 years on that front. So shortest answer is typically 3-year vision, 1 year plan, max 10-year, minimum quarter. Right?
Okay.
Like don't look beyond putting the fire out.
Right. Hey, this is Eric. Hope you're enjoying my interview with Chad. And now, let me just remind you to buy my book, Construction Genius: Effective, Hands-On, Practical, Simple, No BS, Leadership, Strategy, Sales, and Marketing Advice for Construction Companies. Go to Amazon, purchase 10 copies for you and the people in your company. That's an investment of less than $200. Send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com. Say, Eric, I bought 10 copies of your book. You know what I'll do? I'll send you an email right back and say, sweet. Let's book in an hour with your leadership team so that you can ask me any questions about the book, and I'll provide you with a bonus training module. We'll do that all over Zoom. I would normally charge $3,500 for that session. You're going to get it for less than 200 bucks. Books, not 200 books, but 200 bucks just by buying the book. So go out there and buy the book right now on Amazon. And now let's get back to my conversation with Chad. Let me ask you, we're talking specifically about construction companies. And when I think of strategic planning, I think of simply answering the question, how are we going to be successful? In all the work that I've done with contractors, the ones that are most successful are the ones who build the right projects for the right clients in the right locations. Now, let's assume that a construction company is already doing that to one degree or another, but maybe they're that contractor who wants to grow from 20 million to 120 million. How do I manage that? How do I describe or clarify that growth pattern in such a way in my planning process that it's a healthy growth pattern? It's not something that is, because we all know that you can take on a bunch of top line revenue, but in construction, the game is not your top line revenue, it's your bottom line, and there can be a massive gap there. So how can I, in my planning process, properly describe that arc of growth?
So first, I couldn't agree with that concept more, and there's nothing worse way more construction companies go out of business because they take on too much work, the wrong kind of work, than they do because they don't have enough work. That's a fact. And so I often use this analogy of the projects you do are kind of akin to the food that you eat as a business, the fuel that you're consuming as a business. And you kind of have to have a meal plan, a diet plan, and know what type of projects are healthy for your system. and have some rules set up around that. Now, it's also possible that as you do market analysis and you say, our dream is to become a $100 million contract. We're $20 million today and our dream is to be $100 million. But as we assess the market, and you absolutely do need to do market research as a part of this. As we assess the market that we're in today in, Las Vegas, doing projects in sports and entertainment, we believe that the total market capacity for our work is 140 million. That's our total addressable market, right? So if we have a $140 million total addressable market in Las Vegas and we have a vision of getting to 100 million, we now have to start asking ourselves some questions. Should we, if we're committed to that vision of 100 million, should we, A, expand our market sectors? If we were going to expand our market sectors, let's evaluate if that business would be healthy for us. And you really do need to start getting into like what are the scopes and what's going to be the manpower requirements and what all these different things. Can we actually do that work? Can we perform it? Let's just not have bravado and be like, we can do anything. Yeah, I've helped to lead those plans. There's a lot to put back together afterwards. And so that's not worth. So do you grow in the sectors? That's a question. Do you grow geographically? You say, you know what, we're going to pursue sports and entertainment. Well, we're going to pop up branches all over the Southwest, and we're even going to get into into Colorado and so on. And what we're actually going to do is try to have 10 branches that do $8 million each, and that's how we're going to augment the 20 million that we're doing in Vegas. Or do you want to pick up more scopes? Do you want to? It depends on if you're a GC or a trade contractor.
Sure,
right?
Of course.
Do you want to pick up more scope? I've had a lot of success working with contractors who are doing concrete. They pick up masonry and they even flex and get into excavation. But you have to be, again, like you can't just be like, let's buy some equipment. It's everything you do has to be done with a mind to making sure that when you put it into the system, that doesn't make your system sick.
Okay, so we've got this framework here of right client, right project, right location. And I want to use that as a foundational assumption as I'm growing the business. How then, in my strategic planning process, do I balance ambition and prudence?
Everybody's got a different risk threshold. There are folks that I've worked with who are comfortable losing money for a bit. There are folks that I've worked with who are the mere thought of not making a 10% net makes them want to pass out. Right? And everything in between. And I think it is a very individualized answer. Prudence is, but both of these things are subjective, right?
Yes.
And so that's my first answer.
Yes.
My second answer, which will be a little bit more satisfying to the audience, would be that you have to make sure that you don't allow your prudence to keep you from dreaming, and that you don't allow your dreams to force you to make really bad choices. And there's your balance.
That's a good discussion to have during the strategic planning process, because typically when I'm stuck in the business, in the whirlwind, I don't have time to even think through that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have to. And this is why, get off site, do it on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, go spend some time, have homework leading up to it, force yourself to do 2 hours of work on this every night for a month, or, like that kind of stuff. You have to make sure you're not trying to think strategically while you're also trying to, make sure the delivery shows up on time.
Yes. Okay. So as I'm doing my planning process, we've talked about target markets. We've talked about geography. We've talked about staffing, size, customers. What about competition? How, because some people say, I don't think about my competition. I just go out there and kick ass, and, my competition can do with that what they will. Other people really want to analyze their competition and perhaps pivot where the competition isn't, or maybe follow the competition into opportunities. How can I think about my competition in the strategic planning process?
I am definitely a look at your competition advocate. I do not recommend saying, who cares what they're doing? We got to focus on what we're doing. I do recommend that day to day. right? Day to day, there's no value in being like, I heard such and such, did blah, 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 right? Like, okay, cool. Who cares? Where the comparison is a very, very tempting thing,
Right.
and people, the drama associated with that is a very tempting thing. So on a day-to-day basis, I think it's good to ignore it, but absolutely competitive intelligence, research, understanding which of your, so if you're a trade contractor, which of your GCs are working with your competitors, and are you interviewing your general contractors and saying, like, how are they do for you? What are the best things they do for you? What are the things that frustrate you the most? Who are their best people? I want to know all that stuff. I want
So
a
that would be
dossier
part
on
of the
my
prep process then, wouldn't it?
100%.
That's really good.
100%.
So hold on a second then. Let me just back you up here then. Let's go to that prep process, because I think this may be sometimes something that people neglect, right? What are some of the key areas of preparation prior to going into the strategic planning process that I need to be working on in order to maximize the impact of the strategic planning process?
It is, I simplify this. So I have like a checklist.
Mm-hmm.
I have a market checklist. You got to look at the market, and you have to do research in the market. That includes your competition. It includes your existing clients. It includes your potential clients. It includes market sectors and economic data and all kinds of interesting drivers, depending on what you're doing. If you're in multifamily, for example, I'm going to be really focused on, what's the trend in rents in your market,
Sure.
and what's, all that fun stuff as you start to predict what's ultimately going to happen. So there's all the market facing stuff. And then there's internal facing stuff. You've got an internal checklist, which is to take a look at your past performance and look at the financial performance, as well as a series of other KPIs like turnover rate, average longevity of employees, and employee satisfaction. I love doing employee feedback, engagement surveys. I like doing a full-blown internal kind of MRI on the business every 3 years.
Right.
That's a full-blown one. There are all kinds of things you could and should be doing in an ongoing way. And so those are the types of things you got to do prior to going into strategic planning.
Okay. So let me just go back a little further, because I want to hit this point here. And it's all about this idea of managing risk. So every single project I take on, I have to manage the risk of building that project. And the best contractors are the ones who are the best at managing risk. But when it comes to the growth, again, using that framework of right client, right project, right location, if I'm hitting all three of those, obviously I'm minimizing risk to the greatest extent possible. But when I'm growing, how many of those three do I absolutely need to have in place in order to be able to manage risk while growing in a healthy way?
So can I have all three, Eric? Am I allowed to have
but you
all?
kind of can't, right? So if I'm in Vegas, like you said, and I'm going to go to Arizona, then, I mean, maybe I've got the right client with the right project, but it's the wrong location, or it's a new location. I don't know the labor force out there, all that kind of stuff.
So my answer is twofold. One, you have to take every step, every reasonable step to make it the right location. So if Arizona's not your right location, make it your right location. What do you have to do to make it your right location? X, Y, Z, whether it's talent or fill in the blank. What do we need to make that the right location? So that's my first answer. And the second answer is that if you're going to do any of it where you're missing one of those three legs of the stool, you better have the right leadership. Because that is the only thing that can help you to navigate through that stuff, is to have leadership that is committed, that is smart enough, that is culturally aligned, that when the stuff hits the proverbial fan, that they are sticking around and they are going to figure it out. They are going to do whatever it takes. And so that's the right leadership component that I would say, if you don't have that, you can't afford to risk.
That's interesting. How do I know I have the right leadership in place?
That's can we schedule a different show?
Yeah, right.
We'll have to schedule it. I'll say briefly, their results will tend to speak for themselves. The people around them will be loyal and they will love them. They will believe in those people. When I say the results will speak for themselves, yes, in an ongoing way during peacetime.
Sure.
The results will speak for themselves during peacetime. But also when the chips were down, you have real examples of whatever it takes kind of behavior.
Right.
That's how you know you have the right leadership in a nutshell. And if you haven't tested them, you may manufacture some situations to test them before you actually enter into battle, right? Like send them to boot camp before you go to battle.
So then that then leads to my next question. I'm going through the strategic planning process, and it seems like really I probably want to get clear with the owners ahead of time. The owners need to be clear before they come into a strategic planning process on their what and why, maybe because they don't even want to talk with everyone else about the what and the why right now in terms of the planning process that they're going into. But who should I invite into a strategic planning process?
As few people as you can get away with and feel like you are getting a comprehensive view. So that's my best answer to that. The largest group I've ever done strategic planning with, I think, was 15 people. That sucked. That's really hard. That's a really big group to enter into full-blown strategic planning. There are things you can do in that group of 15 people, but building a strategic business plan is probably not one of them. You can get into departmental plans with those people, but that's a little bit too much.
Yes.
My ideal is like five people. Yeah.
So let's
that's maybe for a 120 employee company.
Yeah. Let's break it down then. So if you're going to do a comprehensive strategic plan, and you think about what breaks down, how a business breaks down in construction, you've got get work, plan work, build work, get paid. So there's 4 people right there.
You got it.
And then if you're the president, you've got the 5th.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yep.
So now it's important though that, for instance, so sometimes, right, you'll have these companies where, all right, I'm gonna get the get work people in and maybe the get paid, but I'm going to ignore the build the work people because we'll just figure that out later, or it's some kind of iteration of that. I might ignore the financial side of it and come up with some grandiose plan, and then my CFO or my controller's looking at me saying, "Dude, you're a fool. I mean, this is not going to work based on the cash that we have in hand or the relationships we have with our various financial companies and all that kind of stuff." So speak to that real quick in terms of making sure that you've got the areas of the business covered for the planning process.
So there's 2 different kind of environments here. And you literally took the words out of my mouth, which was really cool, which tells me that we're definitely singing from the same sheet of music. But there's 2 different environments that we can talk about here. I think when a lot of people think about the strategic plan, they think about the retreat or something like that. And there usually is a retreat of some sort. There should be. I like that kind of super concentrated environment where we do go away and we work and we put our head down and make decisions. But there's another environment, which is the environment where we're gathering all of the information from our key people and allowing them to chime in, regardless of whether they're actually going to be at the retreat. I think when I was talking about that group of 5, I was talking about the retreat. And maybe that is a little bit, I'm glad that we're talking about it because I don't want to confuse the audience as they're thinking about their strategic planning group and they're like, man, only 5 opinions? No, I actually want to invite lots of opinions. I want to create a forum for everybody to feel heard. I want the company to know that we're doing strategic planning. I want that, and this goes into that survey, right? The whole MRI that I was talking about, and all that gives us a lot of feedback from the employees, and the employees need to hear and believe that we're using this data, your data, to make decisions about the business. And just because you're not at the retreat doesn't mean your opinion isn't heard. And what I will say, Eric, is that it's about 50-50 with the groups that I work with, whether the build work people are represented at the retreat. Because frankly, that environment for some of those folks is just like nails on a chalkboard, and they don't want to be there. Right? They're like, please don't include me. Ask me all the questions you need in advance, and maybe we meet afterward and show me what you decided before you formalize it. But I do not want to go and sit for 2 days. I want to be out in the field doing my thing. Like,
okay, so it's important though that we make that sort of signpost here that we're not ignoring the folks from the field. But wouldn't it be reasonable to say that, if let's say I have someone who's come from the field perhaps, and maybe my general superintendent or perhaps even my operations person, if it's my operations person, if I'm that size of a company, they should be in that strategic planning meeting.
Yeah, I want them to be. I think Look, I think this is a leadership skill. When that general super, for example, says to me, the facilitator, when I say, hey, I really want you at that retreat, when they say, I'm not going, you can't get me to that retreat, you'd have to drug me, right? You know,
Yep.
So I've gotten that feedback. I also don't hesitate to challenge them and say, I think it's a part of being an executive. You're the executive on this team responsible for building work. Now, that's not the way every company's org chart works.
Right.
Right. So I'm not going to pass that judgment across the board, but it's kind of like when a CEO tells me they don't want to give a speech to their company, where I'm like, look, man, it's a part of being a CEO.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a skill you got to have. And I know you don't love it, but you better start getting good. Public speaking is an executive skill.
Sure. So let me ask you this then, as we go through the planning process, I know we could spend hours talking about this. I think one of the biggest mistakes that companies make is that they have a clearly defined plan, but they take on too much. So I call it dusty binder planning, right? So we spend 2 or 3 days in a planning session. We come up with 15, 20, 30, 40 initiatives. We put them all in a binder. Perhaps if I've paid someone a bunch of money to come in from the outside and facilitate it, they do this fancy presentation. I take my binder, I stick it on my shelf, and it gets dusty.
Yeah.
So what is the ideal length of a strategic plan that is actually going to get executed?
The ideal length of the plan itself. So you're talking about what goes into that binder?
What should my minimum takeaways be, and how can I balance the need for clarity with not being overwhelmed with information and being too detailed?
Okay. So I like my target output is something that is about 3 to 5 pages on strategy itself, that incorporates a detailed description of our vision. I'm not somebody that seeks for some uniting one sentence mission vision statement. I think if you're able to create those, neat. I don't think it's essential.
Okay.
And we're not putting it on our website, right?
Right.
That's
Totally.
not the goal. When I talk about the meat and potatoes of what actually goes into the plan, like I do want written descriptions. I want something, a touch point that is detailed enough that we can go back to and say, hold on, we said we were not going to go after this type of work. And there does need to be a good section that describes our ideal work.
Yes.
There needs to be a good section that describes our culture, our ideal employee fit, our org chart, right? And so I find that output tends to look like something like 3 to 5 pages. Sometimes honestly, Eric, some of the best products I've ever put out have been longer than that. And I've been really proud of those products and our clients have been able to execute on them. But I also don't want anybody to feel like because they don't have like a book, it's not a strategic plan. It's not a valid strategic plan.
Yeah. In strategic planning, how do I balance the tension between setting the direction and then giving too much information so I hinder my people in the execution? So in other words, I'm too prescriptive on what needs to happen, and therefore my team is not flexible enough to respond to the realities of the market, and they get sort of boxed in by this fantasy plan as they view it that is never going to be, has no touch with reality.
That's where visioning comes in, so that the goal isn't to be down into the weeds on every possible detail, but to really create something that says, look, as long as we're heading directionally toward this, that means we're doing it right. And if you're veering in a way that's going to put this vision in jeopardy, that's problematic for us. I think that's where vision kind of comes in, is making sure that you're giving people the leeway to get there however they want to get there, rather than telling them how they have to get there. But there's a piece of it that you talk about initiatives, and initiatives are one of the essential outputs of the strategic plan, and it's not really in my 3 to 5 pages.
Yes, no. Okay, that's good.
Initiatives are a one-pager.
Yeah.
And that's where we're saying, hey, this year our big initiatives are. And I like keeping initiatives to, again, you're going to catch a theme. 3 to 5. Stuff I can count on one hand. That's why, I just consistently, that's why 3 to 5, by the way. It's not that they're magic numbers. It's just that
So 3 to 5 initiatives per department or per person? What are you saying there?
So I think 3 to 5 big company initiatives is a good focal point. And then each department can have their 3 to 5 initiatives that help to accomplish the company vision.
Yes.
Right. So for example, one client, I was just in a meeting yesterday with a client of ours where one of their big picture initiatives is financial and performance management. They have to master financial and performance management. That's something that they're missing. There are 2 initiatives in the project management department that revolve around that. There's 2 initiatives in the estimating department that revolve around that. There are, and obviously initiatives in the accounting department that revolve around that. And those departments also have other initiatives around communication or around, growth or around, whatever else, right? That's kind of what I'm talking about is the initiatives are the thing that really needs the follow-up.
Yes.
So here's what I recommend doing, and just in a short version, because I know I think we review our vision quarterly. We review our values quarterly. We take a step back and we ask ourselves, is this still where we want to go? Has anything changed fundamentally in our business or in the market that changes our vision at all?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to change your vision.
Yeah.
It's okay to say, man, hey, data centers turned into a thing.
Yep.
And we actually, turns out, we think that's a space where we can play, whatever, right? So you revisit the vision quarterly and you ask yourself, is that where you want to go? And you do the same thing with the values. You ask yourself, is this still who we are? And then also you say, are you living your values?
Right.
Are we behaving in a way that's consistent with these same values? So vision and value review quarterly. Then as a team, reviewing your initiatives, I like monthly.
Mm-hmm.
And then in your department, reviewing your initiatives, I like twice a month.
Okay. So that's good because that's going to
answer. That's a system I found works.
That's great. That answers my next question about the accountability cadence. So then that leads me to my last question. Why is it that strategic plans fail?
Almost always lack of discipline in the execution of the initiatives themselves. When companies feel like they are not making progress, when they feel like they are saying the same things over and over again, it saps belief, kills motivation, and the strategic plan turns into a thing that we actually all pretend doesn't exist because it's embarrassing that we spent all that time, money, and energy building a thing that we never put into practice.
Yep.
It's discipline.
Okay, so tell me about discipline then. I'm the CEO of my company. How can I be disciplined? How can I instill discipline into the business?
I have to commit to a level of personal integrity first in being fully accountable for my end of the equation.
Okay.
You've got a list of stuff you owe the team. Inevitably, Eric, and you probably have similar experience. We're in a similar line of work. And inevitably, what I find is that the companies who are failing to execute their strategic plans have executives who are failing to hold up their end of the bargain.
Yes.
Right? They're not doing their part. But what I find is that if the CEO of the company, president of the company, whatever it is, right, if the chief executive of that company is themselves an execution machine, that sets a pace and a standard for the rest of the executive and leadership team that becomes really, really difficult to ignore. And all of a sudden, people step up and they do their thing. So if there's one piece of advice I would have for the chief executives leading this is saying, I want to do this strategic plan, I want to execute, I'm going to say, you need to be excellent in execution. And that might mean that you're working Sundays to get stuff done so that when you show up to the company meeting on Tuesday, that your executive team can look you can look everybody in the eye and say, I'm doing it, guys.
And so that's interesting because it brings us back to that original discussion about the gentleman who grew his business from 20 million to 120. One of the things he realized, if I remember rightly, is that he wasn't really that executor and he needed someone in the business to help with that particular aspect. Is that correct?
So in his case, he was lacking in some of the strategic stuff. He was very reliable on anything that was on his plate. So he was very, very trustworthy and high integrity.
Right.
But the problem was that if something on his list was like determine the viability of opening an office in Charlotte, North Carolina, he couldn't do that. It would sit and stagnate. And so to your point, though, as a level of integrity, he raised his hand and said, I can't do that stuff. It's on my list. And that actually is kind of how it started. It was like there were 3 or 4 things that were on this guy's list. He had done 18 things done, crushing it. 4 things on his list that wouldn't go away. And it was embarrassing for him. And he was like, you know what? I got to be honest with myself. I don't even know where to start with this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to do it. It's the last thing on my right. And so it opened up a dialogue about how we could create an environment where, and there were, and it turned out there was actually somebody on his team sitting right there who was like, please give it to me, sir. Right? Please give it to me, because this is what I love.
Yep. No, I get that. Excellent. Excellent. Chad, tell us a little bit more about you and your business and how people can get in touch with you.
So I'm the founder of Well Built Construction Consulting. We are, you can find us on the web at wellbuiltconsulting.com. And we've been working with general contractors and subcontractors, some owners and developers as well, when it comes to just helping to create positive change in the building industry.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are so many really, really good things happening in the building industry, and there's, like we've been talking about this whole time, most contractors just don't have the time to focus on, what's new, what's happening, what they could be doing different and better. And when we're helping to bring that to them, mostly through the vehicle of building strategic plans and then being their partner in the execution of the plan.
That's excellent.
So that's what we do.
Excellent. Wonderful. And where can we get in touch with you?
So you can reach us through wellbuiltconsulting.com. My name is Chad Prinkey, and you can reach out through info on our site. You can certainly link in with me. I post a lot of content on LinkedIn. I'm always sharing my harebrained ideas and stories and things like that for the construction community to hopefully learn from. We also, I have a podcast as well. It's called the Morning Huddle Construction Show. That's a good one. It's a fun kind of interview format where we bring in people very similar to you. I mean, look, I looked at everything that you're doing, Eric, and I have a ton of respect for what you've been doing and the duration that you've been doing it. I also have a book. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, you're like the West Coast version of me with more experience.
Well, Chad, I really appreciate you coming on. All those links are going to be in the show notes so that people can check you out. The insights here have been tremendously helpful. And thanks again for joining us here today on Construction Genius.
It's been great. I hope I can come back sometime, and I'll be sure to continue to listen to the show.
That would be awesome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode with Chad. As a thank you for listening all the way through, I have a special offer for you. Strategic planning is something that I do with my clients. And if you'd like the framework that I use with them, at no charge, so that you can take it and actually use it without hiring a facilitator, send me an email. Just put strategic framework in the subject line, eric@constructiongenius.com, and just say, hey, Eric, send me your framework, and I'll send it to you at no charge. And you can use that and build your own strategic plan. Of course, you can check out Chad's website for the work that he does with construction companies. And please share this episode with other people who you think would benefit from listening to it. Give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next episode.